Lord knew me before I was born. And in my mother's womb, he called me by name. That is not only true in Isaiah, that is true for each and every single person, you included, no exception. What does it mean to be called by name? Now, most of us is our parents, but when we were born, we were given a name. And when a child is born, what is one of the first questions asked? What is their name? We did it this morning. Chris and Kathleen Olin came in and announced the birth of their new grandchild. And it happens to be Neve. N-E-E-V-E is her name. But we do that often. We carry our names with us. The things that we are called by, titles, names, they say something about who we are in the world. We carry last names which say something about the family that we are part of. And think about it, when marriage happens, the discussion has to happen. Are you taking one person's name or the other? Are you combining them into something brand new? Who is going to give up their name? Or are you just keeping both your separate names? Each decision says something about the couple and how they're relating not only to their names, but how they want to be known in the world. We do this with titles. Sometimes we get titles based in education. If we reach a certain level and do a number of things, we get to be called doctor. And we carry that with us. Or perhaps it's on the other side of the name. Sometimes we choose to use the term junior. It's given to us and we hold on to it. And it says something about our relationship between us and usually the father, and what that means in a family succession. Now, how many have been paying attention to the British royal family? Raise your hand. Okay. Have you paid attention to what is happening and what titles are being used or not these days? You may notice that they get to still be called Duke and Duchess, but they can no longer use the term His or Her Royal Highness. That's a term, a title, but it means that they are official representatives of the Queen, of which now they have taken a step back. They are no longer that. Why am I going on and on about names? Because in our gospel, John the Baptist uses a particular name for Jesus. Now, just to step back a second, remember in the context of the Gospels, we have 4 Gospels. Each one of them tells this story of Christ's beginning in public ministry differently. Each one frames their gospel just slightly different so that they're trying to communicate to their readers something that they will recognize and know, and something they're trying to witness to who this person of Jesus Christ is in their community. And John, in the words of John the Baptist, we have John the Evangelist, who's the quoted author of our gospel, and then we have, in the words, the mouth of John the Baptist, who turns to Jesus and says, what? This is the Lamb of God. Now, no, this is not the fluffy little white lamb. We're not thinking a little tiny lamb. They're really cute. Some of them are being born if you're out in the fields. If you get out of town in the farm field, you'll see these little, and they're running around, it's that time of year. It's lambing time in December. And they are gloriously cute. That is not what John meant to impart. He meant his readers would understand that the title of Lamb of God comes out of Jewish literature. They would hear different echoes. It might be better for us to hear it as this is the Ram of God. It is the power of God coming into the world. It was through the Lamb of God, when we say those words, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. That is the power of God to redo the earth, to renew and drive out all evil. It is the power of God that will get us to the promised land. It is the power of God that gets us to abundant life, that promise that God has made each one of us. That happens through the power of the Lamb of God. And that is what, in the time of the writing of our Gospels, they would hear in those words. It is the reason they can write lines, just the next couple, that say to Andrew and to Simon, "Come, follow me." And they do. We'll talk more about calling. It is going to come up in a couple weeks again. But what we need to hear is that calling, that Lamb of God, is offered to each one of us. So the question is, how is it that we are going to answer that calling? The calling is to follow Jesus into that salvific work, into that work that is going to culminate in that future of abundant life for all of creation. That is the invitation. Now, we also, by coincidence, happenstance, read this particular gospel usually on the weekend of Martin Luther King. And we read this gospel this weekend, I think gives us a particular concrete example of someone who said yes and followed Christ in our time into that work. Now, if you remember, Martin Luther King was the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. He was a theologian and a preacher, and he knew the scriptures inside and out. And when he got up to speak, echoes of our scriptures flow in his speech. And I suspect you have probably heard the I Have a Dream speech that he did in Washington. This is some of what he said. I have a dream. The sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will sit together. That my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. He goes on, and a couple lines later, he makes the reference explicit. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, every hill and mountain be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. Do you recognize those words? You should. I see they are from Isaiah. They are the words that give flesh to the promise of God that all will have abundant life. And yes, we're not there yet. Far from it. But as in the time of Isaiah, as in the time of John the Baptist, and today, we each are invited into that work. So that someday, someone will be able to stand up and say, we're here. We've made it. Our task is to say yes to that ongoing project and to put our own stamp, our own lives in that project. He said to Simon Peter, you will be known. Simon becomes Cephas becomes Peter. We, at our baptism, for some of us, have new names, or in our confirmation name, or if we take a religious life. Each of those happenings, the opportunity exists that you take a new name. You may not want to. You may not have any of those opportunities. I don't know. But how can you make the name that you were called from before you were born? Get in touch with that name and that calling and that relationship to God. Say yes to the work that God has put before you. Each of us has our own work to do. And in that, we become keepers of the dream. We become keepers of the promise. All we have to do is say yes. Okay?